Guys, welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Sergio Prada with us today. He's co-founder at Metal, part of the YC Winter 23 batch. Interesting startup to say the least. Me and Sergio were pre-speaking to that call, and I was just like quite impressed with Sergio's background. Sergio, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about your eclectic and interesting background as an engineer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Charles. I'm Sergio. I've been working in software for the past 10 years or so. I'm from Colombia, Bogota specifically. I studied there chemical engineering. I started some startups there. I actually dropped out to start a startup, which it failed miserably. But it taught me a lot of things, and I kept working. I started working as a consultant after that, and then building websites for advertisement companies and marketing campaigns. And then I kept building and building. Eventually, I moved to San Francisco, where I was in a hacker house for like 6 months or so, building just more knowledge and portfolio until I was finally hired in New York, where I've been living for the past 7 years. And there I've worked at multiple companies, big and small ones. I was the second backend engineer at a startup called Customer, which got acquired by Meta. And then I was there at Meta for a year or so. But during my time in New York, I've been also part of Datadog, Shutterstock, and so on. And now I am the founder of Metal, a co-founder of Metal. We've been working on Metal for about like 4 months now. We just finished the batch winter 2023.
Interesting. So let's make a deep dive in your past. Like, did the young Sergio in Colombia ever picture that the future Sergio would be a software engineer, making it big at like big companies and also starting a startup? Like, how did your childhood and your past influence your current self?
I think I've always had this dream of starting my own company, but the dream of going to YC and building my own startup, working here in New York City, I think that's more of a recent thing. I've been coding since I was in high school. I actually started building websites for like classic gaming clans. I remember building websites in GeoCities and very long time ago. But I've always had like a clear idea that I wanted to start something. But it wasn't clear until I was here in New York City that I wanted to do the startup in technology, and that I wanted to build a company here in Brooklyn. And that's so far it has been great.
Tell us about your first failure. Why was it so catastrophic? What did you learn from it?
Uh, it was so catastrophic because I feel like I was just a kid, super naive. Um, the company was an advertisement company, so we would take like TV screens and put them in elevators and then sell those ads to companies. And so we would go to like these massive buildings that had like four 400 apartments or 5,000 tenants, and we would sell the ads to those buildings. And so we would find like locals who wanted to add advertisements there. But as you can think about it, like the operations of something like that is significant. Like you have to change the ads every 2 weeks. You have to maintain these screens. You have to clean them. You have to sell. You have to sell also to the tenants. So I think there is a couple of businesses like that in Latin America. It's definitely a model that works, but we were just not in a position to build the operations engine required to manage something like that. So it was quite painful. I remember I had to do a bunch of hacks to upload the data into SD cards. And I never thought about scale until I faced that problem, because you say like, oh, you can do that like in a couple of minutes, right? But now you multiply that by a thousand SD cards. So how are you going to upload different ads to different cards? It's just a really big problem. And I had to do all of the technology there. At the end, we started moving into like 3G and other types of technologies to upload data, but it was just too late. I got super burnt out. We were not earning a single dime, so I decided to give up, basically.
Interesting. Yeah, I've had various of these moments myself, but I've been always like super bootstrap and obsessed with not having a job somehow. It's mostly an obsession rather than a rational thing, because you occupied various jobs at various big companies, not for a long time. I guess you've always been like side hustling. But yeah, Shutterstock customer, Datadog, which is hyper popular nowadays, Meta. I want you to tell us what you learned from these companies, what insights you had. And am I right in saying that you took like the big paychecks you earned there, you save it up to kind of cover up for potential rainy days for your next big venture, your next big entrepreneur venture there?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm a person that is really good living below my means. So I've been saving money since I started, basically. Um, I basically only spend money on travel. That's my one thing, and when I do it, I really enjoy it. Like we were talking before we started, I've been to Mexico multiple times. I absolutely love that country. I love traveling, meeting new cultures. So once I accepted that I was going to spend money in this one thing, and the rest of my life is okay as it is. As I keep earning more and more, I was totally okay saving. And that definitely helped me make the jump to starting Metal, because I actually quit before joining YC or having any money at all invested in the company. And now going back to your first question, I learned a lot about teams and how they change depending on the scale that they work in. So I started in a company like Customer when we were only 20 employees. The engineering team was really, really small. And I also noticed that the velocity changes a lot and types of problems change as the company grows. And even when I moved to Meta, the problems were so different and the velocities were different. And so like learning to adapt and figure out where your best effort is the best skill that I probably got from working in all of those companies.
Right. Just for the audience to understand, working at Meta, the salary range in that position, is it fair, an accurate estimate to say that it's at least 300K a year?
I think there's a website, levels that that gives you like the ranges, but like the ranges are crazy. Like you can have like an entry developer earning 200, and someone with 15 years of experience earning a million plus.
Right.
And and there's a lot of like variability to the income. So if you hit like some marks, you would gain like multipliers, which affect your bonus. And then you also get equity refreshes. It's kind of like a snowball effect. Uh, so you feel like you have to stay and you have to stay, and it keeps you. It's where the term golden cups come from.
Right.
It's definitely true.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, you live in SF and New York City, two of the most expensive cities in the world, but you often reflect like with your friends or family back home, what does 300K a year mean for them when they would kind of gain that in a lifetime? Do you often think about that?
Yes, I do. And it's something that I've always discussed with my wife, actually. We've been discussing just moving back to Colombia, where I grew up. I think that there will be a moment where I will make that happen, but at the same time, I do feel like right now being here and in San Francisco is the best place I could be to improve my odds of success. Um, and and yeah, the difference in pay is so astronomical. It's really hard to justify. Um, I do think that the best people that I worked with are people that I've worked with in San Francisco and New York City. But that's not to say that there's really great engineers in Latin America. I know there's companies like Rappi in Colombia that are generating really talented engineers. A lot of them that I have met over the years, including some that were in YC Winter 23. Um, and so I think it's just part of the opportunity cost as well. Like paying rent in a place like New York City could be for a one bedroom upwards of 4,000 a month. So that taken into consideration that taken into consideration plus all the taxes that you have, it still is a really significant difference. Um, but at the end of the day is I think it's about the opportunity cost and getting the best people that you can. Um, yeah.
Right. There's also Austin that a lot of people are talking about, Miami, which is a nice lifestyle as well, and lowish taxes. Um, Indeed, I do think, well, Rappi is one of my favorite startup. I think that YC has started investing in Latam startup quite heavily, and other companies as well, which is so cool. Colombia is one of the best place on Airbnb to get high quality Airbnbs for cheap, alongside with Chile. Interestingly enough, I do think that the real estate market is somewhat of a bubble, but it's a bubble that we all believe, right? It's like, oh, I invested in this and I don't want to lose out. So me, I have this fantasy of like building houses for $500, like that's one of the moonshots I'd like to do one day. But let's talk about remote work. Do you think Meta would let you work from a distance, or do they only pay these salaries for people that actually stay physically and go to the HQ? And tell us about the advantages vs disadvantages of remote vs physical work.
Yeah, it's a big topic. So I think that during the pandemic, they had like a pretty open philosophy on remote work. So you could become like a remote worker, and that would basically make you give you the freedom to work anywhere in the U.S. Um, and if you wanted to work from outside of the U.S., you have like some certain number of days a year where you could spend that time anywhere in the world. Obviously, with some limitations, like I think you couldn't work from Russia and a couple of places like that. Um, but now they're asking people to go back to the office. I believe in, for example, my company is been like in the office every day. So I think that depending on the stage of the company and the type of company that you want to run, remote obviously makes a lot of sense. I see the company that I'm working on becoming eventually remote friendly. But right now, I value the time that I spend with my co-founders every day in a room. I value that more than anything else. And and just to give you an example, when I started YC, we got an Airbnb with 3 bedrooms. Uh, our wives and significant others moved in with us, and we spent there 3 months every single day working We would wake up and work until we went to bed. We had Saturdays off at least, but Sundays till Friday nights, it was just pure work. And obviously that's not sustainable, it's not maintainable, but I, thanks to that exercise, I was able to crunch a lot of productivity, get to really know my co-founders, and figure out a lot of problems that we had at the beginning with the ideas. We pivoted a lot, which is also something that I figured out midway through YC. A lot of companies in Y Combinator pivot midway or even at the end. So we had a goal of not pivoting by the end of the batch, and I believe we succeeded with that. So that's why remote works, where you start scaling your company, where a lot of the work can happen asynchronously. But at the beginning, I truly believe that being in the same room does matter.
Yeah, I also think so. I'm gonna try the physical work. Like me, it's weird. I've been an entrepreneur for the past decade, and I've never done physical work. Most people that I meet for the first time physically, it's because we do like employee events or meetings, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, like quite impressive that information just provided there. And yeah, I can see the non-scalability of it with your wife, like it's like yeah, a bit privacy, and it's like, man, they're so obsessed, but they must also understand in some way. I'm curious to talk about the non-pivot thing, which is really uncommon, especially in YC. Why did you fix the goal to not pivot, and did you tell basically your advisors that, and did they agree?
Um, yeah, they actually did. I think that a lot of people see YC as this pinnacle, which I think in many ways it is, right? It's like it's the best accelerator in the world. Only 1 to 2% of people get accepted, um, and so you see this place as like where really mature companies arrive and achieve the goal of scaling, blitz scaling, and do millions in ARR or MR. And what we noticed is that it's a place where companies go to ask questions and to learn, and to really figure out where product market fit is. And a dirty secret is that nobody has product market fit, a dirty secret is that nobody knows what they're doing. And so it's about accepting that you don't have all the answers, and that not even your partners have all the answers. So you just have to deal with each day as you go. And when we arrived, it was like a ego death, in the sense that we were saying like, oh, we're gonna crush this, we're gonna be the top 1%, we're gonna kill ourselves, and nobody will beat us. We were thinking like that. And then 2 weeks in, we're like, oh, what are we doing? And we started having like these really hard discussions, like, we honestly don't know what we're doing. We have this idea, we have this know-how, we know how to build anything, but you just feel it's just a hard problem, like figuring out what to build and what is the best thing to sell. It's so complicated that it's just it destroyed our ego in the best way possible. And so after those couple of weeks that we were like figuring out what to build, we found like a really good idea and we stuck to it. We stopped thinking about just beating everyone, and we just focused on ourselves. And that mind shift was really what changed everything for us. We just started opening more to our partners. We started admitting when we really were not sure about something, and avoid those like insecurities, or just confronted those insecurities. And yeah, so but at that point we just decided like, let's just focus on building something people want. Let's talk to people every day. Let's not think about like blitz scaling and having millions in sales, and just focus on having something that gives us enough security about the future and not pivot, not change idea. Just if we achieve having that commitment to an idea, then we are successful. And so far we've that's been great. Like um we've changed our mind a lot about a lot of things. And now we're just focused on building and building and building and learning as much as we can from our users and customers.
Right. Who had the idea? Because the idea is so good. And, well, a lot of people nowadays, they're like, oh, ideas aren't worth shit. But the thing is, once you get a good idea, first, it takes a lot of time and mental work to get that idea, product market fit. And, it's kind of quantum physics. But once you get a good idea and you can try to scale that idea, well, it helps a lot to had that idea in the first place. Not sure if that make any sense, but who had that idea? Can you explain to us, like what is metal exactly, and why the idea can actually scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we arrived to YC, we had this idea that was to gather a lot of customer feedback from multiple channels, emails, tickets, GitHub issues, Jira tickets, like any surface area that was possible, and then abstract away some insights about what customers were saying to kind of feed the product manager with ideas of what to build next. So that was our business, right? And the technology that we were going to use was embedding. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with embedding, but it's a way of representing the meaning of phrases and text, images, in numbers. So you can find similar how things are similar or dissimilar to each other. And like a couple like a weekend we thought like, wait, this is really hard to sell. Our selling to product is really hard to product managers. They have so many tools already that it's a big challenge to add another tool to that tool belt. It's not a hair on fire problem either. And so we decided just to start exploring other ideas. And we got into, for example, how to build a better Slack. So that was like our next idea that it took us like a couple of weeks to disapprove. We got into like integrations. And then I had a conversation with someone from OpenAI, and they just brought up embeddings. And I was like, yeah, we're pretty familiar with embeddings. We were going to do something with it, with them. And all of a sudden, like it clicked. And I was like, oh, why don't we just build infrastructure? Or, sorry, I gotta stop.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's fine.
I thought you left. No, my bad. Thanks. Sorry about that. 1 second.
No problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
I went over time, so it's my bad. No issues. But yeah,
Okay.
maybe finish your last one, because yeah, I understand your time is quite precious as well. So finish the OpenAI insight is quite interesting. I also had various conversation with OpenAI folks. I mean, it's the most impressive company in the world, and talking to people certainly helps. It's like somewhat the basis behind this podcast, right? So my understanding is that you kind of iterated on the idea with your past experience plus what's happening in the current market, and you had this idea. You spared mentally with your co-founders, and you're like, okay, let's do this, and then you went into YC to kind of test the hypothesis.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, when we talked to someone from OpenAI, I started thinking like, there's all of these companies that are starting to build things around generative AI. A lot of companies that are moving into this. I don't want to be one of those companies immediately, but I kind of want to work with infrastructure. We really understand infrastructure and developer tooling. So our bet was immediately focused on helping those companies get to product faster, because there's a lot of setup for a lot of those problems. Like you have to set up your own vector database, you have to set up your own API to consume it, your pipeline to index all of that data, generate the embeddings. So there's a lot of pieces that you can definitely build yourself. But if you can save a lot of engineering work, then people will pay for it, and that's currently our bet.
Right. So kind of sell shovels and picks and jeans and helmets to miners rather than build the whole mine yourself, which is pretty logic and pretty YCE. Let's keep it to this today, Sergio. Really grateful for your time. I know that yeah, you're like you need to put your head down and code today, as you usually do. Thanks so much for the insights. Where can people find out more about you and metal?
Yeah, thank you so much. You can follow me on Twitter. My handle is Sergio Prada 666.